Hi, welcome to Memoirs of a True Filipino podcast. I am Kain, and joined with me today is my co-host Andre Harke, and together with our groupmates Julian Ong, Chloe Favelo, Vanessa Chan, Ian Yung, and Ruben Yu. And today we have a fun and jam-packed topic for you guys, and we're going to talk about the story of the pre-Hispanic tradition of the Sugidanon and Binukots in central Panay, and how their narratives of antiquity can be made relevant to contemporary Philippine life, culture, and concerns.
Hey Kai, how are you feeling today?
Mhm.
I'm pretty excited for our discussion today since I also want to know more of our other friends' insights regarding the pre-Hispanic tradition of the Sugidanon and Binukots in Central Panay.
Also feel the same way. Reading about the pre-Hispanic tradition of the Sugidanon and Binukots in Central Panay and watching the documentary made me realize how rich the Filipino culture really is. I was amazed to read about the lifestyle and traditions of the mountain dwellers in Central Panay, Bukidnon.
Yes, same here. But I was talking to Chloe, Julian, and Vanessa the other day about the traditions of the people of Panay and they seemed like they were really into it.
Is that so? Okay, then let's ask the girls about it. Hey, Chloe, Julian, and Vanessa. I want to know more about your insights about the tradition of the people of Panay.
Sure. To start off, the people of Panay, which are often referred to as the Suludnon or Panayanons, have these long verbal narratives called Sugidanon. These are sung by their community chanters and talks about the heroic exploits of their ancestors. In the documentary, these narratives or epic chants were entrusted and passed down from generation to generation through a cultural practice they call binukot.
Oh, this binukot you're referring to, is this when the community secludes beautiful young women from the public eye, with the expectation that this seclusion would make a woman more valuable and sought out by marital suitors?
Yes, that's it.
But how does being secluded from your own community raise your value? I don't get that logic.
Well, based on what I understood from the documentary, the main merit for being selected as a binukot would be being the prettiest in the family. Despite being secluded from the society, their beauty and prestige were widespread. Their physical beauty is even described in epics as beyond desirable by war heroes and rulers. One of the bases for the desirable beauty that was highlighted in the documentary is being fair skinned.
Exactly, and they are able to maintain their fair skin because they are not allowed to be exposed to the sun, to work, and are even accompanied by her parents when taking a bath. This causes the binukot to become frail enough that causes their inability to walk on their own.
Oh yeah, and they mentioned that the only times where the binukot may go out of their household is during special occasions, right? And they would have to be carried by other people because they don't want their feet or the feet of the binukot to be scarred or be covered in mud.
That's also true. Most of the time, the binukot only stays at home where she is obliged to learn about oral lore and traditional dances. She would then go to weddings where she would perform the epics and dances that depict the history of their community. With that said, this makes the Binukot esteemed epic chanters and repositories of the Suludnon's history.
I was wondering, don't these practices remind you guys of how we Filipinos are today?
I was just thinking about that. While reading the story and watching the documentary, I noticed that there are some social issues similar to what we are experiencing today that are present in their community. This brings us to the first segment of this podcast. To be specific, their practices show that somehow the roles in their tradition are very gender specific and gives off the idea of a traditional heroic male and a passive female. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, for me, I also believe that even during those times, gender equality can be seen as a pressing concern. With the case of Binukots, they were limited to just being ladies. By becoming a Binukot, women are basically treated as prized possessions, wherein they were secluded and could not go out on a normal day and enjoy the life of a normal individual, because maintaining their physical appearances would increase their monetary value to marital suitors. This instance itself explains that women before were already being objectified by the community.
You know, I was wondering why the role of a binukot was only given to women in the first place. So I did some research and came across a statement of a past binukot's husband in an interview just earlier this year. Romulo Caballero Sr. is wed to Teresita Caballero Castor, who both live with the Panay Bukidnon tribe in Calinog, Iloilo. When he was asked why Binukot are only women, I was a bit surprised with his answer. He said that we can't make a boy a Binukot because when we say Binukot, they don't work, and it is natural for women not to work. And this shows that until now, their tribes still have the same traditional thinking.
And to add to that, there is also a sexual double standard seen in the themes of the epics, wherein notions of heroism are built into the male characters. This shows that epic literature has been exclusively associating men with heroic visions, while female characters are commonly depicted as docile and passive.
I also agree with you guys that women were treated inferior to men before. It is also evident in contemporary society that women are still not being treated fairly today. In the corporate setting, women are treated as minority, and decision makers of corporations are more likely to choose and put their trust in men over women.
Even our current president, Rodrigo Duterte, has made numerous public statements that have misogynistic implications, and it even came to a point where women in the country protested against his sexist behavior.
It is really disheartening that this kind of behavior still exists today. I would say that in order for us to remove this stereotype, we would have to change our mindset and see to it that we perceive them just like everyone else. We will need to empower them to raise awareness, since most of these misperceptions are subconscious, and we need to do everything we can to change this.
That's exactly true. We know for a fact that we should do everything in our power to stop this discrimination, since it does not benefit anyone. It is for the best of everyone to treat all gender equally, since it does not represent the personality, behavior, and skills that the person has.
Those are very good arguments and insights that everyone was able to point out. It is clear to me and to the audience that there is a disparity in the perception of society regarding gender roles. Now we move on to the next segment of the podcast. I also want to point out that not only the issue of double standards in gender roles were present, however, there's also an implication of colorism in the beauty standards of the Panayanons, especially in choosing the Binukots.
That's right. I also noticed this issue when I encountered our materials. It seems that even during the pre-Hispanic era, we already have this notion that people with lighter skin are considered more beautiful. It was really interesting to hear in the documentary of Cara David that Binukots are being imprisoned to preserve their light and supple skin. Let's dig deeper by asking our friends here today their interpretation on this.
I noticed that too. The concept of white beauty is commonly linked to our past colonizers, a concept that dates back to the Spanish colonial rule. Such colonizers associated dark-skinned Filipinos as poor workers, and those with fairer skin were presumed to be mixed-race Filipinos and are upper class. Similar to the pre-Hispanic practice of the Sugidanon, Binukots were characterized as individuals of higher class status and were entitled to privileges that their darker-skinned counterparts are not able to enjoy. However, the tribes that were situated in Panay Bukidnon were able to avoid foreign aggression from Spanish and American colonizers. This proves that prejudice over skin color has been existing even before colonial times.
Indeed, it is actually very sad that this is carried on and evident in our present society. One of the areas where this is noticeable is the beauty and entertainment industry in the country that pays more attention to white beauty. Having light or fair skin appears to be the global standard in commercials, advertisements, TV shows, and other forms of media today. We could see that most of the models, celebrities, or endorsers we see are those with fair skin, which is deemed to be more attractive and gaining more viewers. We hardly see those who are darker skinned unless they have a wide reach in terms of audience. Another way society presents white beauty as more attractive are through beauty products that are advertised through billboards, commercials, and posters. This is another way that promotes white beauty, and it is possible to transform yourself into this misleading stereotype.
To add to that, several celebrities in our country, including Nadine Lustre and Miss Universe runner-up Venus Ra, have spoken out about the impacts colorism has had on their lives. During an interview on Tonight with Boy Abunda, Nadine shared about having a hard time getting accepted to VTRs because of her skin color. Also, back in 2013, Venus told Pep.ph in her interview that in our society, especially in the province, dark or tanned skin girls are labeled as ugly, and they're even called names like Nog Nog or Negra, while fair or light skinned girls are labeled as beautiful. Having tanned skin is really one of the natural attributes of being a Filipina. So it does not necessarily define and identify us. It is something that links us to our heritage and identifies us as Filipinos. We as Filipinos should nurture and embrace our own skin color and take pride in it.
Well, in today's time where inequality always prevails, I believe that we have to learn and accept that the colorism culture should be scrapped out for us to have a more peaceful society. And that is why we have to give emphasis to one of the major reforms that are being done this year, which is Black Lives Matter, to remove discrimination and show that every race and color is beautiful and capable of doing the same things and be treated the same way. We must learn how to accept our colors, regardless may it be black or white, because these are all God's gifts. In today's time, it doesn't necessarily mean that when a person is white, she is more beautiful. People today have already learned to break and leave the culture behind to pursue further progress, and that was shown by the people of Central Panay.
Okay, well, that was a good realization from Mr. Yu. That actually connects to our third point. The last segment showcases how we should break the stigma of different stereotypes, similar to how the Binukots broke their own traditions in order to save and preserve their literary treasures. Let us call on our fellow members to further discuss the purpose of the Binukot in breaking their own traditions.
I'd like to believe that we are Filipinos because of the identity our ancestors have established, such as our dances, music, practices, and maybe the reason why the older generations of Binukots did not show much reluctance in accepting their roles is because they wanted to preserve this identity that has been passed down from generation to generation.
In the past, the only way for the mountain dwellers to preserve their tribe's rich history is through the epic chanting made only by the Binukots. However, fully relying on this tradition will only lead to their disappearance. Also, the current generation now refuses to submit themselves to their culture since they feel that being a Binukot will remove their freedom.
I wouldn't blame them because I would honestly feel the same way. More importantly, during these modern times, it is impractical to strictly adhere to the Binukot tradition, wherein such women are being deprived of their privileges. Being a Binukot entails sacrificing their own right to be able to go to school and pursue their own dreams. Instead, they are obliged to stay at home to sustain their physical appearances and learn about the epics and traditional dances.
Luckily, the current generation of Tomandoks also now have the liberty to choose their path of whether or not they want to become a Binukot. Just like Emily, she declined continuing their ancestors' tradition of becoming the third generation Binukot in the family. Seeing how her mom only had limited actions and freedom, she chose to take a different path and live her own faith, having the support of her mother. Unlike in the past, daughters in the family have to strictly follow the decisions of their parents, even if it's opposed to what they want, fearing of disappointing and angering them.
Just like what Alicia Magos said, these Binukots wanted to sustain their Filipino flavor or branding, and if they were to steer away from tradition and let modern thinking influence them, it might compromise the culture they have nurtured and be consequently long forgotten. But in the end, it was revealed that the Suludnon were able to preserve their epics. Right, Vanessa?
Indeed, did you know that in Iloilo, people thought that when one of their greatest cultural singer, Lola Susa, died, their epic stories died with her as well? However, Lola Susa was clever enough to break their tradition and pass it to his son, Tata Pedring, in order to preserve their culture, which was highly unconventional during that time since the teaching of chants should only be limited to Binukots who are only females. But Lola Susa made a way to save their culture even if it means breaking their tradition. Moreover, this was able to help them preserve and share their appreciation of their culture to a wider audience through Tata Pedrin, who opened a school. Tomandocs now can freely learn their culture, oral literature, and Binanog without being entrapped with their past practices. Moreover, through this, the extinction of Binukots will not be the disappearance of their oral literature and cultures as well.
You know, this is actually relevant to how our generation is more woke than the older generations. We're more vocal in terms of addressing inequality and discrimination in the country. Our generation now knows that we have to break the toxic behaviors that people have that restricts the minority from being free and who they really are. I believe that the actions of Lola Sousa and the others symbolizes how we should be open to change our ways and values. I mean, Lola Susa had the courage to defy her own beliefs just to preserve the culture that her generation had. We should appreciate more of these epic stories and spread it across the country for the sake of Lola Susa and her family.
Yeah, I agree with all of your points, and it's really amazing to see the extent one individual will go through just to help preserve something he or she truly loves. I really had fun and enjoyed this conversation, and it was indeed an informative discussion. I truly learned a lot about the pre-Hispanic tradition of the Sugidanon and Binukots in Central Panay, and how their narratives of antiquity can be made relevant to contemporary Philippine life, culture, and concerns. I wish we had more time to talk about this topic, but I guess there's always a next time. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you to my groupmates for joining me today and sharing their insights about this topic. Please follow our account on Spotify if you like these kinds of topics, and catch us again next time. And please stay home to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Bye, guys.